trembles. The Senate is divided. Betrayal festers in the shadows, and Kael finally learns the ultimate truth. The man who once freed him from the galleys is the very traitor who destroyed his family. Now Kael gathers allies, preparing to strike at the heart of power. But in the darkness of Rome's palaces, another plan brews. A conspiracy that could end with an emperor's death, and Kael branded as the murderer. This is where his destiny collides with history. Kael sat in silence, his fists clenched tightly on the wooden table as the flickering torchlight casts long shadows across the chamber. The journal of the fallen senator lay open before him, its pages soaked with the weight of betrayal. The words reveal the truth in merciless detail. The man who had taken Kael from the galleys, the one who had guided him into the labyrinth of Roman politics, had orchestrated the death of his father. Worse still, he had manipulated Kael into killing an innocent senator, a man whose blood now stained Kael's conscience forever. Rage burned within him, hotter than any flame. But Kael was no longer a boy driven only by vengeance. He was a man, hardened by years of combat and sharpened by the cruelty of Rome. He knew that blind fury alone would not destroy his enemies. Rome required strategy, allies, and blood. Lots of blood. He summoned those who had fought beside him in the arenas, men who owed him their freedom, and others who had quietly despised the corruption of the Senate. Slowly, Kael began to weave his rebellion. His speech was simple but powerful. Rome is not theirs, it is ours. If the Senate rots, then we will cleanse it. If an emperor is in danger, then we will shield him. And if traitors rule, we will break them. The men roared in agreement. Swords clanged against shields. For the first time, Kael felt the tide turning in his favor. But he also knew that his enemy was cunning, ambitious, and ruthless. Word of Kael's movements would not remain hidden for long. Far across the city, in a luxurious villa, the senator who had betrayed Kael stood before a table of conspirators. His plan was as bold as it was deadly. Instead of fleeing Rome, he would strike at its very heart. He would assassinate the emperor himself, casting the blame upon Kael, and in the chaos that followed, seize power. As the night deepened, thunder rolled above the eternal city. Rome was on the edge of a storm that would leave its streets running red with blood.
The senator's villa became the nest of treachery. Wealthy nobles, disillusioned generals, and power-hungry merchants gathered in secret. Each had grievances against the emperor, and each was willing to gamble Rome's stability for their own ambitions. The senator's voice cut through the murmurs. Kael is our weapon. His anger, his thirst for vengeance, we will turn it against him. When the emperor falls, the mob will cry his name as assassin. Rome will demand his head, and in the chaos, we will claim the throne. The conspirators nodded. Plans were drawn, assassins placed, bribes exchanged. Every corner of the palace would be infiltrated. And Kael, he would be led like a beast to slaughter, unaware that the stage was set for his destruction. Meanwhile, sought out veterans of past wars, disillusioned by the corruption of the Senate. He found slaves freed by his victories, who now swore loyalty to him as if he were already their leader. To Kael, this was not just rebellion, it was justice. But he underestimated the speed with which the senator could spread poison. Whispers traveled like smoke. Kael was planning to overthrow the emperor. Kael sought power for himself. Kael would burn Rome to ashes. Kael knew nothing of these lies. He only knew the time was short. The more he read the journal, the more he realized how deeply betrayal had infected the Senate. His father's death was not an accident of politics. It was murder, crafted by men who valued power more than Rome itself. For Kael, the fight was no longer personal. It was a crusade.
The moon hung low over the eternal city, its pale glow bathing marble temples and golden statues in ghostly light. Within the emperor's palace, rumors had already reached the ears of guards and servants. Kael's name whispered through corridors like a curse, tied to conspiracies of blood and treachery. Some feared him as a would-be usurper, others admired him as a savior who might cleanse Rome. The emperor himself sat in silence, draped in purple robes, listening to advisors quarrel. Some insisted Kael be arrested immediately, branded a traitor. Others argued that Kael's loyalty was unshaken, that he had already saved Rome too many times to be its enemy now. The emperor's brow furrowed. He was not a fool. He knew the Senate had long plotted against him, but in Kael he sensed a weapon or a threat. Kael, unaware of the debate, sharpened his blade in a chamber surrounded by loyal companions. His heart pounded not with fear, but with anticipation. He remembered his father's voice urging him to protect honor above all else. That memory drove him now. He would not allow Rome to collapse under the greed of corrupt men. But shadows were moving even within the palace. Conspirators had bribed servants, turned guards, and smuggled assassins into hidden halls. Every corridor was a trap, every flickering torch a danger. The emperor's shadow stretched long upon the marble, for treason lurked at his very side. Kael's men prepared their armor, swearing oaths of loyalty. He raised his sword and declared, "Tonight, Rome decides whether it belongs to tyrants or to her sons." The palace erupted in chaos just past midnight. A scream pierced the silence, followed by the clash of steel. Assassins, cloaked in black, poured into the marble halls. Torches were extinguished, plunging rooms into darkness, while blades flashed in sudden bursts of firelight. Kael and his men stormed forward, shields raised, cutting down the first wave with brutal efficiency. Gladiator training served them well. Every thrust was precise, every strike final. Yet the conspirators had planned well. For every assassin slain, 2 more emerged from hidden corridors. The emperor was rushed toward the inner sanctum by loyal guards, but betrayal lurked everywhere. Twice, Kael intercepted soldiers who turned their blades not on assassins, but on the emperor himself. Rage surged within him. Rome had rotted deeper than he feared. Flames spread as torches were hurled into draperies. Smoke filled the air. The palace, symbol of Rome's strength, now resembled a battlefield.
Kael fought like a man possessed, each strike fueled by memory. His father's murder, his stolen years as a slave, the betrayal of the Senate. The conspirators expected Kael to fall, but instead he carved a path through their ranks, his cloak torn, his armor splattered with blood. His men shouted his name, rallying behind him. For the first time, assassins faltered, realizing that Kael was not their scapegoat, he was their doom. Yet still, the night burned hotter, and somewhere in the chaos, the betrayer waited, ready to deliver the final blow.
Blood slicked the marble floors as Kael pressed deeper into the palace. His shield was cracked, his sword chipped, but his resolve unbroken. Beside him, former gladiators fought like lions unleashed, roaring as they struck down enemies with merciless strength. Corridors echoed with screams, steel clashing against steel. The conspirators had unleashed mercenaries trained for war, but they had not counted on Kael's brutal efficiency. His every move was born of survival in the arena, where hesitation meant death. Now, hesitation belonged to his enemies. One assassin lunged from the shadows, blade aimed at Kael's throat. Kael sidestepped, grabbed the man's wrist, and drove his sword through his chest with a single motion. Another leapt upon him, only to be hurled against a column, skull shattering. Kael's rage was unstoppable. But with every step, the resistance grew. His men fell one by one, cut down by overwhelming numbers. Still, Kael pushed forward, forcing his way toward the Emperor's chamber. His vision blurred from blood dripping into his eyes, yet his will never faltered. By the time he reached the golden doors of the sanctum, he was bleeding from half a dozen wounds. His body screamed for rest, but his soul demanded victory. Raising his sword, he roared, "For Rome!" and crashed through the doors.
Within the sanctum, the Emperor cowered behind loyal guards as shadows flickered against gilded walls. And there, at the center of betrayal, stood the senator, Kael's former benefactor, the man who had guided him from chains to the Senate. Their eyes locked. "You," Kael growled, voice breaking with fury. The senator smirked, lifting a bloody dagger. "Yes, me. Did you truly think I freed you out of mercy? You were always my pawn, Kael, and tonight you will die branded as traitor." Rage consumed Kael. He lunged, sword striking with the fury of a storm. The senator parried with surprising skill, revealing he was no mere politician. They clashed, steel ringing loud above the cries of the dying. "Your father begged for Rome's soul. I gave him death instead. And you are nothing but the echo of his failure." Kael's blade sliced across the senator's arm, drawing blood. But before Kael could finish it, conspirators swarmed between them. Chaos swallowed the chamber once more. The senator, wounded but alive, slipped into the shadows, escaping as Kael was dragged down by fresh attackers. Kael roared in fury, fighting like a beast cornered. He cut his way free, protecting the Emperor, but the taste of failure burned deep. His true enemy still lived.
The palace lay in ruins. Smoke rose from shattered halls, Corpses littered marble floors, and the stench of blood clung to the air. Kael stood over the Emperor, breathing heavily, blood dripping from his wounds. The Emperor gazed at him in silence, then slowly placed a trembling hand upon Kael's shoulder. "Rome owes you her life," he said. Kael bowed his head, but inside he seethed. Victory tasted hollow. The true betrayer had escaped into the night, leaving Kael wounded and haunted. He had saved the Emperor, but not Rome. Not yet. The surviving guards knelt before Kael, murmuring his name with reverence. To them, he was no longer just a gladiator or a rebel. He was a hero. But Kael's heart was heavy, for he knew this was only the beginning. As dawn crept over Rome, Kael limped through the palace ruins, sword dragging at his side. His men carried the fallen, mourning comrades lost. The war was far from over. The senator lived, his scheme still twisting in the shadows. Kael raised his eyes toward the rising sun and whispered, "I will finish this, even if it costs me everything." The episode ended, not in triumph, but in the promise of more blood to come.
The battle for Rome has only just begun. If you want to see Kael's next move, don't miss the upcoming episode. Subscribe now, join the legends, and stand with Kael as he thrived for honor, truth, and vengeance.